Ladies and gents, boys and girls, pronouns of your choosing, welcome back to the Firefighters Podcast. It is great to see you. It's great to have your ears with us once again. Hope you're well. Hope you've had a fantastic day. We have got a great episode for you. Now, as I'm sure you're more than familiar by now, the purpose and the big why behind the podcast is to hunt out those incredible frontline workers and really get the pulse of what it's like to be in that world. The challenges faced by all of our frontline workers, foreign and domestic. Today, my guest is my good friend Ben Vessey, and we're talking about becoming a Royal Marines Commando, what it takes to do it, the mindset, the effort, the resilience, the fortitude, and how you can follow that passion beyond the front line and now into the world of business as well. Ben is an operator, Ben is an entrepreneur, and I'm proud to say Ben is a demonstration of one of the world's most elite fighting forces. Ben gives us a great insight in his journey as a Royal Marine Commando. Now, as is the nature of people in the military, we can't go into the full depth of Ben's experiences and Ben's current operations. However, we're going to get a great understanding of why this job is not for everybody. You've got to dig deep to aim high. They'll stop at nothing. They operate in the most hostile environments and the most treacherous terrains on the planet. They swim deep in the oceans. They jump from the planes. And there's no such thing as an average day for a Royal Marine Commando. Because ultimately, there's no such thing as an average commando. Ben's a wonderful example of that. And we discuss how he balances his really high standards for himself and for the people that he works around, and balancing that with his everyday role as a family man, a husband, and an entrepreneur running a successful clothing company. But before we jump in there, let's hear from our Firefighters Podcast family. Now, when you're looking ahead to that night out or looking ahead to the weekend, you've been working hard, why not treat yourself to an amazing night or day out with Blue Light Ticket? Blue Light Tickets allows venues, sports teams, attractions, festivals, and concerts to give free tickets to NHS and or emergency services staff to say thank you. Because there's so many massive venues, so many huge companies that really appreciate what everybody's been doing during the pandemic, and especially the work we continue to do every single day out on the front line. So to fully leverage this, visit bluelighttickets.co.uk and find out more. You can register there. You can enter ticket ballots for free to attend events all over the UK. Before we get in there with today's guest, I want to put a massive shout out to our good friends over at William Wood Watches, Johnny and the team working hard, creating those luxury British watch brands from upcycled fire service equipment. Now, if you haven't seen who these guys are, you've got to get over to williamwoodwatches.com. These are a luxury watch brand with some fantastic history in the industry. Late grandfather of the owner, William Wood, was in the British Fire Service for 25 years. Now his grandson, Johnny, runs the company, celebrating these heroes, sharing that courage, that bravery, and keeping the dream alive with the role models in the fire service all over the world. When you jump over to the website, you'll see their Valiant collection, the Bronze edition, the Chivalrous collection, and new this year out was the Triumph collection. So for more information, head over to williamwoodwatches.com and check out their beautiful collection right now. Also want to give a shout out to our media partners, the Emergency Services Times and the Emergency Services Show. We're also working in line with the Cheshire Fire Challenge and the British Firefighter Challenge. Competition's back on in the UK towards the end of 2021. All the details are in the notes for the show. And that's the names in the frames for today's episode, folks. So if you're sitting comfortably, buckle up for safety, and I will see you on the other side. So we have a lot of people on the podcast, and people talking about joining the front line, people joining different emergency services and all that sort of stuff. And something that always enters people's mind at some point when they're leaving school and stuff like that is joining the military, and they're like, you know, I want to go out for something that really tests me. I want to go and join the military. But you hear so few people that actually follow through on it. And obviously we've had guests on before, but we rarely ever manage to hunt down members of the military, usually because you're off actually getting the work done. But Ben, when did you join?
So I joined in 2011. I was 17.
17 when you joined, so literally straight out of school.
Yeah, I wanted to join as early as I possibly could, and at the time was, I think, 15 and 9 months old or something like that. So I still would have been in school. I went to the careers office and basically got told, you shouldn't do that. You should, finish your school, whatever qualifications you can get, and then sort of take it from there. But yeah, and I ended up doing a public services course in Plymouth, and then joined during that time. So I sort of finished college and then rolled straight into it, really.
Were your parents ever in the military? What made you want to do it?
Yeah, so I come from like a military family background. My old man was in the Royal Marines. He was a mountain leader, which is one of the hardest branches in the Marines to do. And a lot of my dad's friends were also in the Royal Marines. So I sort of grown up around it, really. Always had an interest in doing it and always had it in the back of my mind.
That must have been a fairly intense sort of upbringing to be around, though, because growing up around that group of individuals, we talk on the podcast a lot about value of association and stuff like that. Did that have an influence of you? Was there always like the idea of going above and beyond, pushing yourself to your limits, or were you given freedom to sort of still choose your own path?
Yeah, so for me, sort of leaving school or even during my school time, joining the military was never really pushed on me. It's always something I've wanted to do from an early age, and sort of my family would have been happy with whatever path I chose to go down, really, as long as I was happy doing it. I think it was just inevitable, and everyone, including my friends and family, knew that was probably the route I was going to take, really.
What did you know about the job? You know, obviously you heard your dad going off on training and stuff. Did he talk about it much?
Yeah, I mean, didn't talk about it a lot, really, unless I sort of asked questions. And during my early years, it wasn't really an issue because my dad was, he actually got injured during a climbing accident. So he ended up getting medically discharged when I was a young age. So for me, I can't really remember him being in the military, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you wouldn't remember them being in it. But I bet that was really nice, actually, because you sort of benefited from it far more. Because I imagine, even though with the physical challenge that your dad had to go through, the mind was still there. So I imagine he was still really passionate and still had that same get after it mindset. I mean, nowhere near the same level as you, but my old man, he's ran a building firm for like 50 years, and he always used to do all the bloody Cubs and Scouts and all that sort of stuff. And when we'd have weekends off together, he'd take me out into the woods and we'd be building stuff, and he'd teach me all my knots and lines and all that sort of stuff. And I think there's kind of parts of that bled over to me into the fire service. And whenever we'd go away to the coast or something, we'd be the family. We didn't have plastic buckets and stuff. You know, we had like 4 big lengths of lashed rope, and then we'd have a bloody canoe and a few bits of 2x4 he'd taken from a job that he was working on, and we'd build something ridiculous. We'd be that family on the beach that the other families crowded around because they had a bloody 10-foot sandcastle. Was there always that aspect of?
That's all you need.
Yeah, that's it, brother. You know, I loved it, that playful side of it. Did you ever feel any of that?
Yeah, of course, definitely, yeah. And sort of my dad's friends as well, obviously still being serving at the time, growing up around them. And actually a couple of them are firemen now, to be fair.
Really?
Yeah.
That must be strange.
No, it's good though, because I think a lot of stuff from the military obviously goes over to the fire service and the police, and obviously all the emergency services. So it's good.
There is, but I feel that like the basic training that you get in the military, and I call it basic training in the most polite of senses, is far more has a lot more crossover than, with all due respect, a lot of like the fire service stuff does. Because a lot of the stuff that we learn, you know, it's pumping ladders, breathing apparatus, it doesn't really have a massive amount of crossover. But so much of what you guys do, whether it's, you know, land warfare, navigation, topography, you know, just self-care, personal admin, just the physical disciplines, the way of thinking, that sort of master problem solver approach. That personally, I feel has a massive amount of crossover. And I know we've kind of gone off on a tangent as well, but I think this is why you see a lot of big companies. And I know, you know, we're going to get on to clack off clothing, but I think I see a lot of big companies recruit from the military. Have you seen and heard of those systems in place where people actively look for ex-service personnel and almost like feed them into management systems, because you're benefiting from such an embedded mindset that's designed to win, it's designed for success?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've got friends now that I went through training with, and like the last few years that have decided to leave now to go on to bigger and better things. And some of the companies that they've left for, they've gone like straight into like that managerial role where taking control of like small team, making sure everything's in place. So I think big civilian companies do definitely look at that as a positive.
Yeah.
To obviously get their business in the best place as possible.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many places I want to go there. Every time you say something like that, it acts like an atom that just explodes, and I've got like 1,000 questions. But I want to go back before we jump forward too far to you know, when you first enlisted. I've never done it. You've seen the films and you think about it, and I'm sure a lot of people have thought, I'm just, you know, whatever, I'm going to go and join the army. What is it actually like? What do you actually do when you enlist?
So obviously it's a tricky one, and it's not for everyone, of course. But that comes quite apparent within the first sort of couple of hours, to be honest, because those people don't want to be there. You have a brief idea what it's going to be like. I can only obviously talk about the Royal Marines.
Did you go straight in the Marines? So did you go straight in the Marines from 17?
Yeah.
I didn't know you could do that. I thought it was like, I know I'm just so naive with all of this. I thought it was like everybody joins the military. I thought infantry, I don't know.
Yeah.
And then like the select few, if you perform well, you could apply. Because I hear like the David Goggins of the world and stuff like that. And I know I'm super stereotyping now, where when they were going for certain selection processes, you already had to be a recognized competent soldier. Whereas with all due respect to a lot of military, I kind of see the Marines as not better or worse, but kind of like a different skill set, maybe even a slightly higher level. I didn't know you could go straight in at that.
Yeah. So there's a sort of a selection process before the basic training starts, which is called a PRMC. It's sort of an acquaint, really. That sort of weeds out everyone that, one, doesn't want to be there, and two, isn't going to make the cut, basically, for basic training. You have a brief idea what to expect, I suppose, and then obviously you've got the shock of capture as soon as you get off the train on day one, basically.
Really? They do that on day one? So when you see them imitating this sort of stuff on your SAS, Who Dares Wins and stuff like that, is that sincerely, obviously like a diluted version, because they have to remember all the P's and Q's, and I'm sure it's been padded up and cotton wooled a little bit as you see it on the TV, but they do actually do that then. So you took a train, and I know some of the details by the very nature of the role you can't necessarily go into, but it's a train from wherever to wherever, and as you get off with all your kit, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, is capture from there, is it? And I'm sure every course may not be the same, but...
Yes, they have a train station at Lympston, where obviously the Commando Training Centre is.
Yeah.
So everyone gets off at that stop with all your sort of kit that you've been told to bring with you, including your ironing board. And then,
you have to bring an ironing board with you?
Yeah.
I love that.
That's your best mate.
Okay. So you get straight off the train.
Yeah, straight into it, really.
So what is it, like balaclavas and drag you off?
No. Nothing like that. It's you're all suited and booted, and then you'll have like the drill instructor who basically will take you through your first 3 weeks of training, from teaching you how to wash your nuts to how to iron your shirts, basically.
So it's real personal admin stuff, because I suppose the areas that you go in the Marines, and obviously the Marines and all aspects of the military special forces and stuff, operate all over the world. So if you're kind of picking up a deficit from what potentially may have got missed in that nature nurture aspect of it. Obviously you were not lucky, but you benefited from growing up around somebody that already had, I would imagine, very high personal standards. But it's not necessarily general across the board. Without getting too personal names and stuff, did you come across people that heard, because the military tends to attract, and I don't want to stereotype, people that they either desperately want to do it, or they've ran out of things they want to do, or they never felt like they belonged, or they just want to escape and go and do something that really gives them purpose. And sometimes it can be a bit of a shock, I imagine, when you see how much or how little personal care and development they got. Did you ever have anybody that you were like, Jesus Christ, dude, you don't know some of the basics of how to look after yourself?
Yeah, of course. I mean, like you were saying, you get a massive range of lads that will turn up on day one that don't even know how to iron a shirt. So everyone's in the same ballpark, really, because they have to teach you the basics from day one. So it's ingrained into you how to do things properly, and that stays with you then for the rest of your life, basically. But they have to do that because they'll get lads turning up that don't know those basic sort of how to administrate themselves, like that basic. Even washing yourself, you know what I mean? It sounds stupid to say, but that's where so many lads fall down. Yeah.
Because you'd be putting your body through that much stress that general personal admin, people that feel don't need to shower properly each day or even look after themselves, they're like those marginal gains, a bit like a chronic injury. If you don't stay on it every day, the small things soon become the massive thing, and people going out with just whatever gout and just horrible just infections in their feet or in the balls or whatever, like you say, because they're just not looking after themselves.
Yeah, and it's basic stuff that you go through in basic training, and you get told, like, when you are, or get the chance, to administrate yourself, it's your weapon, your kit, and then yourself. Because it has to be in that order for when you eventually get out on operations and you've got 10 minutes to sort of do something. That's the priority. Making sure your weapon's ready, good to go, eat, and then if you get chance, get some sort of head down and change your socks or something. You know what I mean?
Socks is the big one. Now, I know you're probably going to laugh and roll your eyes, but I did I'm a member of something called ISAR, which is International Search and Rescue. And we do I think it was a 5-day, which is basically nothing compared to what you guys do, but it was like a 5-day arduous conditions course where you romping all over. I think we went to Wales and did it, and you're basically simulating you're in a foreign country giving aid, helping with collapse structures and stuff like that. But there's certain aspects of the culture that don't want you to be there, so you might have to move out of an area if there's a hostile force around, and you need to just blend in or go and sit down and hide or go and camp up in the hills somewhere. And every time they would say to us, they'd say, right, this is what personal admin is. And it was kind of like not playing military, but they were like, a lot of what we're going to talk to you about comes from the military because they do it the best. And it was all about that. Every time we stop at a waypoint, or every time you get somewhere before you need to, or you've took all your kit to the top and you've got 10 minutes, bang, it's personal admin. And they were saying exactly that, shake your feet, get some chow down. And that's one of the things. And I think this kind of came from my... This whole thing kind of came from my sports background as well. Every time, because I did so much eating and always do my nutrition, everything like that, I've got like a reset bag. I've got a black 511 tactical bag. And every time I get home, it's always like my reset bag. So I get in and I always put a few pieces of fruit in it. I'll put like some oat cakes. I'll put a protein bar. I'll refill my shakes. My 2-litre bottle of water goes down one side of it. And I always have that bag. There's always some jogging bottoms in the bottom of it. Always got my gym kit with me. Always got a pair of boxers with me and just some soap and a towel that really, it's one of those gym towels that dries really quickly. And I always call that my reset bag, because if I get a call, I go to a client, or I'm going to go and cover at a different fire station or something like that. And I think so few people do that. So few people, they're just like blowing through life and they're just like affected by the weather. Do you know what I mean? They're never...
Definitely,
And it doesn't that just, and I mean, I've never been to the immersive extents that you have, but just coming out of where you were in training for a second, how do you cope with that on a day-to-day basis? I mean, today, let's be honest, today we started about 2 or 3 minutes late, and then we've had a whole clusterfuck of a Wi-Fi issue that's gone on. But how do you deal with that? You must have so many moments of, oh my God, how are these people so shit? Do you have that, or do you manage to swallow it a lot? How does that work?
Yeah, a lot of swallowing.
A lot of swallowing.
That sounds wrong.
No, yeah, it does sound a little bit wrong. I thought that's what the military was. That saves me a few questions halfway down the page. At least I know you're a swallower. That's okay. No, but do you know what I mean? It must take that, and I have it, but I'm sure I don't have it to your extent because I've not had the exposure to the things that you've had. But I have it where you're like, you know what? Whatever, 200 years ago, these people wouldn't exist in our society anymore. I just feel like through natural wastage that have been pushed out the culture, but it's kind of like we've absorbed everything now, and it relies on people like yourself or the frontline workers, and to a lesser extent, fire service, emergency services, to sort of protect and serve and all this sort of stuff. And we love to do it, and I get why we do it, but how other than just swallowing it, how do you keep a lid on it? Because, you run a business, so this involves you interacting with other people. You exist in society when you're not on deployment. How do you do that? Can you expand on that at all?
Yeah, of course. I think the big one is just to try and stay positive as best as possible, because obviously everyone fucks up at some stage, and you've got to sort of roll with it as best as possible. There's no point getting like down about it and then expecting your day-to-day life and then everyone else around you. I think you just got to stay positive and try and get the best out of everything that you can, really.
Yeah. I always hear people say things like, maturity and wisdom comes with age and stuff like that. But the longer I've been working in the services, I agree with that, but I also disagree with that, because I think you can compress it. Yeah. For example, I always think of people like yourself as living 2 or 3 lifetimes in one, because not because you're mad crazy working 23 hours a day, but just because you've taken yourselves to the edges of several different comfort zones in several different spheres of your life. And if people have just never marched out to the edge of their comfort zone and either looked off the edge or taken the leap, they've never had that exposure. And their day-to-day life, their habits, their behaviors, their adherence to things, their personal discipline is all based on those experiences. So when you come across people like that in day-to-day life, sometimes people say, "Oh, you're lazy," but you know what? They're not necessarily lazy, are they? Because they've just never been exposed to it. They've never,
and they don't know any different. That's the thing.
Yeah, and that's hard. But I find it difficult, and it's so. I think it's a hard subject to talk about without sounding like an egotistical dick. Do you know what I mean? Just you never want to seem remotely condescending. And I've got it tattooed on my right arm. I'm no better than no one. I'm better than no one, and no one's better than me. I'm always, when I talk to people like you, I hear all your acknowledgements and accomplishments. It doesn't make you better than me, but I know that I can be everybody's student. I can learn from everybody, even people that are in different levels in life, because somebody that's never exposed themselves to the same sort of physical adversity you have may have climbed the literacy ladder. They may have climbed the academic ladder. They may have delved into so many areas of the world. Social media, you and I were talking about that before we came on air. Jesus. Do you know what I mean? My son, I've got 3 kids, 2 boys. They probably know far more about social media, yet they've never exposed themselves, with the greatest respect, to physical adversity. They've never competed at a high level in something, but they've got more experience in a very narrow field.
You can't be good at everything.
You can't be good at everything. No, there's a thing in there about choosing your lane, I suppose. Now, you obviously had a lot of support from your family when you did it, but what did you imagine, having heard it from your dad, but you kind of heard it from your dad when he'd already reached that position of being in the Marines and reaching that sort of rank and acknowledgement in his career. How did you imagine it to be before you went in versus what it actually was?
Yeah, I had a good idea of what to expect, especially from doing the sort of PRMC, that like little 3-4 day course you have to do prior to joining. But like I was saying, the shock of capture on that, especially that first 3 weeks of training, is, you know, it's full on. You're seeing all these like grown men around you sort of falling away, like just not being able to either cope with the stress or the physicality of the training itself.
What is the age range like? You say you joined at 17 and you're around grown men. Do people still join in their, I don't know, 30s, 40s, 50s? I don't know. Is there an age limit?
Yeah, there is. I believe it's around the 32, 33 mark. Okay. That might have changed now, but and it starts from 16 onwards, really. But
17, I mean, men have growth spurts up until they're about 21, 22. So as a 17-year-old against, like, not up against, but in an environment around 25, 28-year-old, there would have been a big difference in physicality and things like that.
Oh, yeah, massively. Like, I think I was around, like, 60 kilo, maybe a bit heavier than that, which was, like, on the limit, really.
Oh, is there a weight limit? Like, if you're too emaciated? So you were about 10 stone. You were light. Jesus.
Yeah, there is. Like very fit at that stage, mainly sort of body weight stuff and CV stuff.
Yeah,
I got and I think what tipped it was I got a superior pass on the PRMC. So on paper, it looked like I was, you know, good to go. And then during my time training, I was always at like the high level, like sort of gym pass out, bottom field pass out. I was always at like the top. So the weight never really affected me when it came to sort of yomping and load carrying, because everyone's just in the hurt locker at the same time.
Yeah, I was going to ask about load carrying, because you're speaking a lot about body weight, you know, calisthenics and stuff like that there. Is there much, is there any kind of test around a static load lift? I mean, just to echo back to the fire service, you have to do an overhead lift and you have to do a dummy drag and stuff like this. So there is a set weight that isn't relative to your weight, if you know what I mean. Calisthenics is predominantly obviously relative to the individual because you're lifting yourself. Yeah. Whereas when you're getting into the romping territory and, you know, going on long tabs, that's where the weight is what it is, 60, 70, 100, 100 pounds, whatever it might be.
Weight, yeah.
So, you know, do you actually have to pass a static lift of any form? Do you have to show that you can, I don't know, lift a dummy? Do you have to pick something off the floor? Do you have to do an overhead press?
I think a lot of those sort of joining tests now have changed since I joined in 2011. When I went through it, was sort of there was a set time or a set weight, and as long as you did that was all that mattered. I think now there's more like sort of tests in place so they can sort of gauge how you're going to progress during training, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Like more of a sort of sport, sort of nutrition performance sort of graph almost. If you can follow that, then scientists have worked out that you will get to the end of training.
Yeah, no, you can definitely do that. Even with like an overweight guy or a girl, you can do like a VO2 max test, and you can gauge what's in them, if that makes sense. Even if physically they appear a bit obese or something like that, you can gauge from their age, their height, their general weight, and how much of it is fat tissue and their sort of body composition. Based on also coupling into the VO2 max test, you can gauge what they can get to. It's a little bit like if you see a retired athlete. They could still have a great capacity, even though they might look out of shape. They've got it in them, and if you put them in the right environment, they will achieve it.
Yeah,
there's a much better statistic. Is it predominantly, do you think, those first 3 weeks? Is it the physical that kills people? Because I speak to various people in the military, some operational, some in various aspects that we kind of can't discuss, but they often say it's not about being the best athlete. Is that really true? Because some of it does sound bloody hard.
Yeah, I mean, I use the first 3 weeks as an example because I think a lot of people that have I'm using as an example, but for someone that's been in like business and I've joined the military at like, let's say 28 years old, they're not used to having a fully grown, man shout at them, telling them that they're in the shit because they've not ironed their shirt properly and getting their locker emptied.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it is what they say. It's the state of mind. You have to just forget about all that shit, pick it up and go again.
Can you swallow
and
it?
I think a lot of people struggle with that. For me, it wasn't really an issue because I was 17, didn't know any better, and I knew I just had to get through those 32 weeks training to get what I wanted.
Is there a thing there about, not I want to stereotype young people these days, but did you ever see anybody front up to, any of the instructors or anything like that? Because you could see that sometimes, and I've certainly seen it in our training school where people just come across, we're in the military, this is the fire service, but you see a little bit of shouting in a BA drill or on the incident ground, and some people, I've just seen it where some people just snap and they're like, who do you think you're talking to? Do you know what I mean? And it'll be a young kid, turning and not sort of squaring up to somebody, and you're like, dude, what the hell? You need to have a mental bandwidth where you can just absorb that. It's not personal. Did you ever see that? Did you ever see anybody snap?
Yeah, you do, but not to that sort of level. I think you quickly realise who you're talking to. Yeah. And, you don't want to be receiving the wrong end of that.
No.
Because at the end of the day, you're getting trained by Royal Marine Commandos, have been on numerous operations.
Yeah.
And you're wanting to join their clan, basically, in the brotherhood. So, you got to tread very carefully.
Yeah, I suppose it's a weird one, isn't it? Because even if you're like, oh, be careful who you're talking to, catch the wrong end of it, it's not because you think you could or couldn't take this person. For example, if you were a semi-professional boxer.
It's respect.
That's it, yeah. And you were like, well, I don't care who he is. I could take him. Yeah, you might be able to take him. That's not the point. You're missing the whole goddamn point. Yeah. And I wonder if, do you think recruitment's as popular as it ever has been? Because now you've been in, obviously, and you've been in for ages, 2011, you joined. Do you see as many people, because I think the range of jobs that people can go for these days is massive. It's huge. When we were kids, or certainly when I was kids, it was like, whatever, builder, accountant, go and work in a food factory, work for the council. There was a smaller range, I personally felt, or that I could see. Whereas now, I mean, obviously you've gone off and had that entrepreneurial itself, but you could do whatever. You can make mugs, you can just be a social media person, you can edit podcasts, there's so many things you can make a living from. Is military as appealing as it ever has been, do you think?
I think it's probably an all-time low. I know recruitment's taken a big hit over the last few years, especially the Royal Marines. I know there's a lot of sort of money getting pumped into advertisement and trying to make it look as Gucci as possible, but I think the people that you want to join are the people that have wanted to join for their their whole lives.
Yeah.
They've had it in the back of their head going through school, or maybe they've gone to uni and they've chosen to do a degree, but still they've gone, you know what, I don't really want to go and work in an office, and still want to join the Marines. They're the people that you want to be joining these sort of elite military organisations. You don't want someone who's just sat on the sofa going, oh, you know what, I'm going to give that a go.
Yeah. But I suppose now, like you say, with the world being so noisy in terms of things like social media, just getting a connection with those people, because they're out there. Like you say, I don't think there's necessarily a lack of people that, there's a massive amount of admiration. I personally have, and I know I'm not alone. I think everybody in the UK, well, generalised, but has a real support for our frontline workers, and certainly people that go overseas and keep us safe. Yeah. But it's finding a way to them and being able to get them to you. Do you know what I mean? Because some people socially, financially just feel so limited, and it's just so hard to reach people these days. Since you've been serving, has your perception of it changed at all? Because you've been on multiple deployments, have things differed for you? How do you look back at it, and how has it changed for you?
To be honest, I think the only way it's sort of changed since I joined in 2011 is just when I joined, it was all about, everyone wanted to join to go to Afghanistan, and then that sort of died right down, and there was no real conflict, and still not now, for people to have that drive to go in to do it, if that makes sense. There's still obviously small operations going on around the world that you can do, but it's not massively in the media, you know what I mean, on the news and stuff. I think something will happen in the next few years as as it always does, there's always these lulls, and then something else will happen in one of these shithole countries, and that'll be the drive that everyone needs, I think.
Yeah. You know what? I thought about that with the fire service as well, though, because obviously we've had 9/11, we've had Grenfell, you know, we've had the Manchester bombings. There's been some big stuff, but man, I haven't seen an increase in recruitment. I haven't seen a whole bunch of people going, God, I want to go and be a firefighter. You know, I want to go and do that. And I see that across a lot of stuff. You know, I speak to members of the police, and I think the police, I don't know how you feel, mate, I think they get it the worst. I mean, not all police officers are great and all that also. Some people get what they deserve, but I wouldn't want to do the job. I just think they get treated. Oh man, they get treated so bad. The money's rubbish. I just think it's a hard ass job. I'm not surprised they struggle with recruitment. But the people that I speak with,
I think it's a lot of the restrictions as well, to be honest.
Stops them doing what we all morally know they should be doing.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Especially when you look at like the police in Europe and stuff.
Yeah,
like we're the only country in Europe, or not anymore, but not all armed.
Yeah,
I just think that's crazy with all the incidents we've had, you know, the last few years, that's still not a thing.
It's like we're sending lambs out to the slaughter, isn't it? You know, people on the streets are tooled up far better than half of our police, and I'm just like, this ain't fair. You know, like you say, you look around Europe and across the world, and they ain't playing games. And you know, it's no surprise that they have.
It just comes down to respect.
Yeah, that's it.
You get all these scumbags that just know they can get away with absolute murder.
Yeah, basically, because, you know, the people who claim to know all of the human rights and all this sort of stuff, it just, we've tied ourselves up. And I get that we did it for a lot of the right reasons to start with, but in so many aspects of society now, it's kind of like the pendulum's swung too far. Do you think the military has managed to, because of the, I don't want to say secretive, but perhaps, you know, because of the secretive nature, and rightly so, of the way that you train and the way that courses are ran, do you think the military has avoided any of that? Do you think it's managed to? Because ultimately, you need to be able to put people through adversity. Otherwise, you're going to send them overseas into places where our morals and values are not shared, and we're not going to be able to cope with the way that people treat us and the way that the things that people are willing to do to win. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? When I look at this in a sporting world or something like that, if you send people over there and just say, "Oh, just eat good nutrition and you know, do your best and stretch every day," and you're sending them to compete against Germany, who are all jacked up on steroids or something, you're like, you're never going to stand a chance. I'm not saying everybody go and take steroids, but do you know what I mean? If you're not subjecting them to the same level of adversity. So do you think that still exists in the forces? Because, you know, I want us to get onto sort of banter and stuff like that, because characters built by, you know, stones sharpen stones. You know what I mean? You sharpen a sharp blade on that stone, and it requires that grind. It requires, you know, you put a blunt piece of steel to the grind, and it screams. It absolutely screams. But that's how you build the blade. And I always think of the military in that respect. You need to be in a bit of a closed environment where you can really push people quite hard, physically, mentally, in a way that would, in society, be considered, oh God, immoral, you know, unfair, you know, just, you know, you'd be all over the front page. Has the military managed to avoid that?
I think definitely, yeah. And what people have got to realise is training is supposed to be hard. You're supposed to be at the bottom. You're supposed to be at the worst possible scenario you could be in. So when you do pass and you do go on operations, you've seen it all before, and you know that you can operate in that shit state, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And especially the Royal Marines, it's, you know, it's the longest, hardest training in the world for a reason. You want that person to get to the end of training and be, you know, ready for anything. That's why it is the best.
It must be difficult for them to, and I hope it never changes, but, you know, I never want to see the fun police get in there, because ultimately it will just weaken us and weaken the world and weaken our influence upon it, and we'll become, you know, it will take us to a dark place if we don't. You've got to fight monsters with monsters in a certain way, and I'm not saying Marines are monsters, but you've got to be able to build a weapon that you wouldn't want turned against you.
Yeah, exactly. And they're the people that you want and need.
I mean, we see a lot of dark humor in environments like that as well, because it kind of takes you through it. And we see a lot in the fire service. We went to a guy last night that got paralyzed, and then somebody a couple of weeks ago had his legs ripped off at a road traffic collision. And the best way to deal with stuff like that, it tends to be through dark humor. Not always for everybody, but it kind of makes it all a little bit tolerable. But I think of the military as taking that to a whole new level. Well, it's one of the things we have lost in the emergency services, because we sit very much in the visual side of the public sector. We obviously work in our communities. pranks and stuff like that, they used to be great, but they've kind of all gone out the window. Is the banter and everything still as strong in the military as it ever was, do you think?
Yeah. Well, yeah, especially in my time. Been all sorts going on, and I don't think it's sort of gone away in what you were saying with it has with the emergency services, but we're not in the limelight, so I think that's probably the only saving grace.
Yeah, we just have to be careful when we're sitting in traffic and stuff like that, and you've got the windows down and you're talking about a job. You've got to remember that somebody might be stood outside the cab with their phone.
With a camera.
Yeah, with a camera, with a phone, recording, talking about what you're saying. And if you're just talking about an incident you've just been to, that's it. That can cost you your job. And
yeah, definitely.
It's tough because I think it's super important that we try and maintain some of that. But you've got to do it in such a safe space. Yeah,
and the thing is with humour, that's what sort of makes the job. It's what keeps everyone, everyone's morale high when times are shit.
Yeah.
It's what gets you through these things.
So obviously, I mean, you people like your dad will have a good understanding of that, and colleagues if you associate with them when you're not on deployments or when you're not in training. But have you got a partner? Have you got a partner or kids?
Yeah, so I'm married. I've got twin boys and a new puppy.
A new puppy, congratulations! Yeah, which one's your favourite?
Twins wasn't enough.
No, twins is a good one. We unfortunately miscarried twins, but I always thought we'd end up with twins, but we've got 3. It's now that we've got 3, we finally decided that we definitely want 2. So I'll put it out there on the podcast. If anybody wants a 19-year-old,
one for sale,
we can drop them off. No, I don't even need to pay us for it. No, it's fine. Anyway, how do you find sharing stuff like that? Because it's kind of like you need to pull the pressure release valve from deployment. Sometimes I know when I go on jobs and stuff, I come home and I appreciate. I don't know if ours is easier or harder. Again, we don't necessarily go to the extremes that you guys do, but I feel like in the emergency services, our trauma might be, I don't know, and I'd love to hear your opinion. I feel it might be slightly less, or it might be slightly more, but I definitely think it's more frequent. Because like you've said, you may go on a deployment at some point in time. Like at the minute, if there's no big conflicts going on, then somebody might go a couple of years without ever going into conflict. Whereas we will experience potentially fatalities on a weekly basis, and and then you have to try and change from 6th gear to 1st gear on a very regular basis and share those things. Have you ever come back from deployments and tried to share some of the stuff? Do you find that works? Is it sustainable, or does it just add noise to the relationship?
No, I think I'm very lucky in sort of my relationship. My missus puts up with a lot of shit. So yeah, I don't know how she does it. But for us, when we come back from operations, we have a thing called decompression, where it'll be the whole sort of company together for a few days before you even go home. That basically just means everyone getting on the lash.
They always used to do that in places like Cyprus, didn't they? Do they still do it over there?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
that must be awesome.
It's just a good blowout for everyone, and then you can come home then and then get back with your friends and family and sort of enjoy that time.
Yeah. It must be important. Do you find it, or does your missus, I mean, it'd be great to talk to her. How do you find it living on a day-to-day basis with somebody, or how do you think she finds it, dealing with somebody that holds themselves to high expectations? And I know we've sort of covered a little bit of this ground already, but do you think you're a difficult guy to be around? Come on,
probably,
let's see where the self-awareness is. Let's try and gauge it. Because I'm horrible. Yeah. I'm not horrible, but I'm a recovered addict.
At times it's probably unworkable.
Yes, that's it. Do you sit down and watch telly much? Are you much of a sit-down chill dude?
Not really.
No,
I would rather be out doing stuff.
But I kind of feel a bit guilty about talking about all the stuff that I enjoy doing, because then when you go back on shift, or even if you see your folks or friends or stuff like that, and they'll talk about going to the pub, or they'll talk about sitting down and watching a film, and in your mind I'm just like, oh mate, I would hate that. That's just torture. I go in the lounge sometimes to use the roller. I've got rumble rollers and stuff like that. I go in there to stretch and get the bands out, and that is it. Do you know what I mean? And I'll do rolling around on the floor.
Smash your head off the wall.
That's it, yeah. And then I'm back out. I'm to the gym, or I'm to the station, or I'm in the study, and I'm working on a project. That must be quite difficult. Do you ever feel like you have to hide that, or do you ever feel like you have to apologise for that, or
no?
How do you do that?
I think my missus got used to it now, to be honest. Okay. I've got to be doing something. If that's either, like you're saying, doing projects, or especially with the business, I'm always thinking about how we can progress, or what are we going to do next? How can we improve? Or yeah, always trying to do the next thing, basically.
Do you ever think much about retirement? Because people use the word retirement, whether it's from the job they currently do or something like that. But I don't buy into it. I don't really.
Nah.
I don't get it. If you're not doing, the world is such a big place now. If you're not doing something you enjoy, just quit. Just stop.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there which you've probably not even done.
Yeah.
So and there's always a new place to go and visit.
Always. People talk about retirement like it's going to be a time when they can be at peace and they can, unplug and unwind. Yeah. And, I think...
I don't think I'll ever retire.
No, absolutely not, mate. I don't, but equally, I don't think I'm going to work for the rest of my life because I don't, honestly, without seeming like a dick, I don't even think I'll work now. I enjoy everything I do. I enjoy training. I enjoy coaching people in business or clients. And then I enjoy my fitness. I enjoy the fire service. I love this, talking to super interesting people and creating a company out of it. I love that. Yeah. I don't see why people feel imprisoned by that. I think most of the time they're often scared of their own light. They're scared of what they potentially could do if they were honest enough to go for the thing they want to do. And they subscribe to all these ideologies of what's expected of them that, that's a dark place. It scares me.
You've got to be doing something that you love doing or else you're doing the wrong thing.
So when we look at business and in the Marines and other aspects, you've gone into the military and stuff like that, setbacks is always something I find interesting because you can be bold enough to go for it is step one, but ultimately you're inevitably going to have the setbacks. You're always going to get the knock. You're always going to get the didn't pass the thing. Have you ever had setbacks first and foremost in your professional capacity in the military? And how have you dealt with them? What, has it all been rosy? Or are you the son of a Marine? You're just going to blitz through it all? Has that been the case?
No, definitely not. I had a massive setback during basic training. It was actually on the last commando test, which is the 30-miler. I got a thing called double pneumonia. I went down around the 20-mile mark. I got taken to hospital where obviously when they conducted their tests, etc., and they found out I had pneumonia. But just didn't know at that stage, you know what I mean? You're so fit and your mind's set on, getting these tests done to get what you've been training for 32 weeks.
Yeah.
And then I just felt like it got ripped away from me.
So is that the case that you have to go straight back to the beginning again, basically, and go through the whole training again?
Yeah, so I was quite fortunate in the fact that there's a thing called Hunter Company in Royal Marine Training, which is basically a company you go into if you've been injured or if you failed a test and you're sort of just holding out. But I was quite fortunate I didn't have to go in there. I sort of had a few days in hospital and then returned to TTC. Well, I went into the med bay there to rest up basically while the rest of my troop I joined with were on the final stages of sort of passing out and going to their units. I was waiting for the next troop to come through, which was 2 weeks later, to do all the tests again basically. And I can remember the MO, which is the medical officer at the time at CTC, who said to me, it was like, I'm happy for you to do the test, but I would recommend not doing them. And I was just thinking in my head, like, I'm this close to getting what I want to get.
Yeah.
And I've got to do it all again. So I ended up doing all the commando tests again pretty much the week later.
How do you set your mind up for that sort of thing? Because are you allowed unlimited goes at it, or is it like three strikes and you're out? Or
to be honest, I'm not too sure.
Because that'd be what would scare me.
This.
I live in life that you can keep going for it. But if I had something where somebody's like, you've only got one more go at this, that
yeah, I mean, it probably would get to the stage where they probably would say that.
That would be scary, because then you'd be like, well, look, I think I'm ready to go for it, but I don't feel 100%, and you're like, I don't want to do it again. What was it like getting pneumonia? Did it just sneak up on you? Because I've never had it.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously didn't know I had it, and to be honest, the first few commando tests I did, I smashed them because you're so fit at that stage. Didn't really affect me, and then obviously the last one, the 30-miler, being the daddy, that sort of caught up with me, and took me down.
Gee, 30-miler. What time do you get to cover that? Is that the one over? Is that the fan dance?
No, so the 30-miler is you have 8 hours to do it, and it's over Dartmoor basically, carrying day-sack, weapon, and rifle.
What's that weighing at?
I believe it's around 40-50 pounds.
Okay, so a manageable way, and is it all self-navigating?
Yeah.
'Cause there must be. How many people are on the course by that point?
So you're down to obviously the bare minimum at that stage because it's the last test of training.
Yeah.
I think we had around 20.
20. So there's still a fair amount of
Yeah.
you. Do you set you all off at the same point, or do you have to like do a staggered start, or?
Yeah, it's a staggered start, and you do it in sections. Yeah, I mean, it was horrible.
There's something about Dartmoor, just the undulating terrain of it, isn't it? Every time you
its own weather climate.
Yeah. That's what I mean. And my fear would be rolling your ankle and stuff like that. It's not necessarily if you could physically get through it, because I think a lot of people, if they put their mind to it, could do 30 miles or even 100 miles if they had to. But it's the terrain.
Yeah, and it's not really the distance or time either. It's just that your body's so fucked at that stage of training, like so beaten down and had no time to rest. That's the test in itself.
Yeah.
I mean, if anyone could go and do the 30 miler, if you've rested and well nutritioned, it's sort of the time period you have to conduct all the tests in a row is the challenge.
Yeah, it's that mental endurance of it. I'm sure you probably feel that a little bit when people talk about that sort of 30 mile, and they're like, "Oh no, I think I could do that," and you're like, "Yeah, anybody could." But could you do it after this, and that? You're missing the whole point. Do you know what I mean? You're looking at it's like when people look at the Olympics, or they look at a CrossFit, or they look at a professional sports person taking a penalty at the end of 90 minutes, and they're like, "How could they do that? How could they miss that?" And I'm like, "Dude, they've just done 90 minutes of high octane adrenaline pumping this. My mum could do that," and you're like, "Yeah, but not after that." Do you know what I mean? That's kind of the bit I think they're missing out on. So since you've been doing all of this, and I see it so much when I look at the brand, you've decided to start, taking on that entrepreneurial itch. When did you first decide that you wanted to get into business? Because the brand Clack Off Clothing, firstly, I love the brand. I love the imagery. I was looking at the website again this morning before we came on. When did the idea from that come from? And have you always had an interest in business?
Yeah, I think I have, to be honest. I've always been good with money and sort of known what I want to do. The brand itself, like the idea to go for it, or having the balls to go for it, was last year, and I was just seeing all other military brands sort of doing the same sort of sketch, and I was just like, you know what, it can't be that difficult. I'm just going to give it a go.
Yeah.
And just rolled the dice with it, and it's worked out well.
When did the military change in its acceptance of people doing this sort of stuff? Because I had to tread a very thin line, and I still do when I'm doing the podcast now, because people don't want to see, or some people within the services don't like to see people monetize their passion. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Certainly when it comes to something that they think you should just be doing it because the will of it, but the way I always pitch this, I'm always like, I'm a UK firefighter. I don't say what service I'm from or anything like that, because it's not relevant. It's a skill set. It's a bit like saying I'm a plumber or I'm a builder. I'm a firefighter.
Yeah, exactly.
At the end of the day, you're a Marine. You're a military individual. You are whatever you are. It's a skill set. You're not representing a certain service. The German military, British military, whatever. Has that really changed? Because we take our mind all the way back to when some of the first books started coming out, or even far more recent, when you see the Ant Middletons of the world and stuff like that. But when do you think when did people become more accepting of people utilizing that passion?
I don't really know, to be honest. I think everyone's just become a lot more willing to accept that people can do other things as well as be in the military, as long as it doesn't affect your job and your day-to-day working output. I don't think it's really got a massive effect. Obviously, with the content that you can't expose, etc., that's just sort of basic common sense. But it's definitely becoming more and more common, as you can see yourself from the military or even emergency services sort of branding that's around us now. I think it's mega.
I think it's great as well, and I think it actually works both ways. And what I mean is, I think it helps out. We've been speaking there about recruitment and stuff like that. With all due respect, by the limitations of the fact that a lot of these are government-controlled services or bodies or organisations, they're quite limited in some of the things that they can do. They can't necessarily make it cool, quote unquote cool. Do you know what I mean? They can't engage on the same levels because they are hamstringed by restrictions, policies, procedures, ways that they must convey themselves. So I definitely think it helps it out because you're still extremely passionate about the role that you do. And that comes across in the company itself. What's the big goal for the company?
I'd say some of the biggest goals that we've got is trying to maintain the enjoyment of actually running the company.
Yeah.
For me, it's like I don't really see it as a chore or a job. It's more of a hobby. Like I enjoy doing it. I enjoy coming up with new ideas, new designs, like how I can make it as sort of enjoyable for everyone, like all the followers, etc., keeping everyone sort of current with everything, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I almost think of it as well, like you allow yourself to be romantic about the job that you do, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
The stuff that if you were in your team at work, on a deployment or something like that, it's the stuff everybody probably used to think before they joined or when they first joined, but now they think they're too cool for school or something like that. But when you look over to the public sector, that's what we admire about people in the Marines, people in the Special Forces, people in the paras, whatever like that. We admire these things and we want to feel connected to it because it's that value of association. People feel like they can uplift and inspire themselves if, they're doing the same as what Ben's doing, the same as what Goggins is doing. They feel connected to it. And it's almost a way for them to show some pride, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely.
Is there an aspect of authenticity in it as well? Because I found that's been one of the biggest things, certainly for me, because I'm currently an operational individual. Do you know what I mean? I actually do the job. Do you see people going into the sector who have actually got no authenticity? The opportunists that see the military or see an aspect of the emergency services and go, I'm going to try and create a brand for that. And then actually there's no authenticity behind it. Do you think that plays a role? And is it sort of a secret superpower for what you do?
I wouldn't really say it's a secret power. I think it's just sort of the civilians out there that obviously follow the military brands, emergency services brands. I think they like it because it's something new. They can learn more about these sort of branches in the military, different emergency services, and it's a way for them to sort of, one, have a better understanding, and two, they feel they're supporting these companies by, if that's buying a T-shirt or if that's buying their, brand of coffee.
Yeah.
Or, I think it's a win-win for everyone, to be honest.
Definitely. And I think it's something, like you say, it's the ability for people to connect to it rather than just saying words when they're with their friends and go, no, you know what, I'm really proud of what the military do. It's a way for them to materially support it.
Of course.
Have you found any challenges when you first started the company? Because going from 0 to 5, I think, is the hardest step. Sometimes when you get the ball rolling, you've had a few successes, you've got a few companies, you've got a few distributors on board or whatever.
Yeah.
Then it feels like you start to build a bit of momentum. But until then, you're just a dude on your own with an idea. What were some of the challenges you faced when you first started?
I mean, one example, I won't name and shame anyone, but this one company we were dealing with, which was a T-shirt sort of printing business, which got recommended to me, was really good. We did one order with them. It was, everything was fine. And then sort of the second one we did, it was just an absolute nightmare. Like, I was pulling my hair out, and I was overseas at the time, so my wife was dealing with everything, which I didn't want her to do, obviously, because she's trying to catch two twins running around the house.
Yep.
But yeah, I think it's just trying to sort of understand how different companies work, and you're used to having certain standards, especially like timelines and getting back to people when they say they're going to get back to you. Yeah, I mean, it was just fucking driving me insane.
That's it, isn't it? Some people are just like, even for me, sometimes, even if it's just, dude, tell me you're busy. If you're busy, tell me you're busy. Because when you hear nothing, your mind fills in the blanks. You're like, you don't care. You're ignorant. You're rude. You're X, you Y, you Z. You're unprofessional. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes that is definitely the case. And sometimes people just read something and they forget about it. I specifically sometimes leave unread messages on my phone for sometimes days at a time by accident because I don't find a moment in the day to give it focus. And I don't want to open it and then get distracted or whilst I'm doing the tasking. But then you're like, how does this look from the other side? This is why I love doing audio bites. I hate sending emails and messages and stuff like that because they can be interpreted in so many ways. I feel like
definitely read wrong and everything.
That's it, mate. Just get on a quick call or drop a quick audio. Now, clothing brands have been gaining momentum for probably the last 40, 50 years. I mean, obviously clothing's been huge for God knows how long, but what was the trial and error process like with that? Because the brand is fantastic first and foremost, but when the product arrives, if the transfer is rubbish or if it doesn't feel good, what's different about the way your products feel and how much went into the trial and error of how you like to feel the product to feel?
So I was quite fortunate in the fact that I've got a friend that owns a very successful clothing brand as well.
Oh, working.
So I obviously had a lot of tips off him, so I didn't make the same mistakes that he had made, which was lucky. But like all our products, for example, like especially the t-shirts, are all 100% organic clothing, even recycled, some of them, which I think just gives you that it's a lot better quality garment. And there's loads out there, like the Fruit and Loom sort of t-shirts, which are your bog standard cheap ones.
Yeah.
And then going all the way up to like, going to sound like a right clothing pest now, but like Earth Positive and stuff like that. That's like the ones that everyone seems to be using just because of their quality, really.
Yeah.
And when the print goes onto them, it lasts. Like, you can put it in the washing machine for however many washes and it's still going to be good to go. It doesn't shrink. Basic stuff like that, which you yourself would want to buy. That's the way I sort of look at these products when we bring them out. Would I be happy to pay for that?
Yeah.
And I have the same sort of views on everything that we bring out. Like, would I personally want to buy that and wear it? And that's what I just sort of gauge it off, really.
Because otherwise, you're only selling once. Do you know what I mean? You almost feel like somebody's purchased it, but you kind of got one over on them. Or it's horrible when you bought something and you're like, man, they did me. This is actually rubbish.
And that's obviously not the route that we want to go down. We want people to buy the product, go, I'm well happy with that, and then come back in the next design, they go, I want one of those, please.
That's it, yeah. You want them to be sharing it with their friends. You want to be the guy that's... I've only started wearing nice clothes probably in the past, not very long, I'd say the past 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And it really matters. You do find yourself buying less clothes. They last a lot longer. People notice they're well fitted. Back in the day when I was competing in strongman and taking all kinds of drugs and stuff like that, I just wore big baggy clothes and I looked like crap. It
didn't matter.
Yeah, I just wore joggers and all this sort of stuff. And you think it doesn't matter because and people defend it with like, oh, I don't care what people think of me. Don't judge a book by its cover. But you feel different. When you're wearing something that fits right, it feels good. It really does make the difference.
Yeah, totally agree with that.
Now, entrepreneurial life can be a bit of a lonely one, though, and I spend hours and hours. I speak to members of the team on Zoom and stuff every now and again, but a lot of it's done you on your own on the laptop. How do you sort of work on that? Has there ever been a challenge for you?
Not really. I mean, I try and I'll have moments where I'm just zoned out and I'm thinking about stuff, but I'll try and bring in like my wife and my friend that helps out with sort of designs and stuff as best as possible. Like, we've got this little WhatsApp group where we sort of share designs and ideas and how we can sort of progress it. So I'm not just trying to keep it all to myself, and like if I've made a mistake or something shit, they'll quickly tell me.
I think that that humility, that humbleness to raise your hand when you have made that mistake. Certainly. So it's you say about this WhatsApp. Is this like a couple of members in a team or that support the company or have invested in it?
Yeah, so it's my wife, and then I've got one of my best mates who's actually serving as well. He's in 29 Commando. He sort of give him the job role as chief designer. He's come up with a lot of the designs that we've used for our tops and stuff.
Yeah. So when you're looking at building and growing a business, and I know they always start small, a couple of friends, but you very quickly have to have a lot of self-awareness, thinking about the way that you're communicating with people. Because I always say to people, nobody is ever going to care about your business as much as you do. They're not. So just stop expecting them to. Just stop saying, oh, why haven't they got back to me? Why this? Why don't they care enough? Why are they not showing up? Where's the thing I asked them for? Look, they're never going to care about it as much as you. And that's where you really have to double down on those soft skills. and being able to
definitely.
motivate people, keep them on board, keep it interesting, keep it exciting. And I thought about this when we were sort of coming up to doing our chat today around how much of this crosses over into day-to-day life in the services. Because sometimes you've got to go through stuff that nobody wants to do. Maybe you don't want to do. Maybe it's quite challenging, and sustaining that enthusiasm. And a lot of this is leadership principles. So what are sort of some of the key aspects that you think a leader has to possess?
I'd say to start with, you've just got to have a real big open mindset of, what to expect from other people, what they expect from you, and try and work together as best as possible. Definitely humour in the face of adversity, massive one. I'd say that just gets, especially myself, gets me through most things in life, if that's good or bad.
Have you ever done any sort of development for that? Are you one that reads books? Do you do any sort of audio, or has there been anything that you've really found valuable?
Not really, to be honest. I mean, I've not done any sort of leadership courses, obviously apart from ones in the military. But yeah, that doesn't really cover off on stuff like that. That's just, basic sort of life skills, I guess.
What sort of skills do they cover in something like a military leadership course?
Just, obviously being able to control and command a small team, really. Obviously having that respect for sort of a chain of command, knowing what to do in these situations, and just, you've got a lot more weight on your shoulders when shit hits the fan, basically.
Yeah, it's not
everyone else under you is looking to you to, do something.
Yeah, you're one to make the decision. I always say to people, it's not it's not your job to come up with all the answers necessarily. And I love what you said about one of your friends that's in commando unit at the minute, contributing ideas and stuff like that. It's not about having the idea or even having the answer, but it's about you're the one that's got to make the decision. And I think that's that's the difference a lot of people struggle with. Some people in teams think that the leader, and even the leader themselves, think they've got to have all of the answers, like they need to be the smartest person in the room. It's not about that, and I think a massive part of acknowledging members of the team is letting them know that they may have the best ideas. Like you saying, look, you've got the best mindset for design, you're coming up with the best imagery, you lead that. I'm happy to take the responsibility if it if it goes crap, if it just lands flat. But I suppose there's an aspect of that in there. Yeah,
of course. It all comes down to responsibility, really.
Yeah.
Especially for myself, like you were saying, it comes down to say yes or no on the idea, and that's why we've got that small little group where we can discuss stuff like that. If something's shit, it's going to get brought up in there fairly quickly. So we'll try and amend it in the best way as possible, or just completely scrap the idea altogether.
Have you had that where there's something you thought would be absolutely amazing and everyone else is like, Ben, that's crap, that's rubbish, no one's gonna like it?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a good example to use for that. I think no, we were gonna do some sort of water bottle design. And that didn't even make it past the sort of the design stage.
It is. You've got to learn to try and sort of stay in your niche as well. Because I think about this with the podcast all the time. I'm like, because t-shirt design and stuff like that is certainly something I want to start doing with the podcast, because you see lots of people doing it out there already, but I don't see any that. What I love most about the Clark clothing stuff is it's not tacky. Does that make sense? It's not like when you see with all due respect, you see the t-shirts on the market, and just some of the imagery and some of the sayings are just like. No self-respecting person that knows anybody in the military, let alone is the military, is ever going to wear that.
And that's
never
going
to wear that. And I see that with the fire service. I see the stuff that's designed is probably for people that admire the fire service, or people that admire the services in general, but don't really have a remotely realistic understanding of what it's about, of any of the stuff that happens, the job, the equipment, the mindset, the training. And I suppose that's something I would love to do more of, because I see companies like yours and I think it just works. It's a physical manifestation of somebody's passion, and they just look great.
Yeah, thanks very much.
So maintaining the physical and the mental was something I wanted to ask you about as well, because you've obviously been through a lot of stuff physically and pushed yourself to different limits, but having to change gears from the military mindset to the business to family, I find when people start getting a bit of success or things start getting busy for them, their self-care is one of the first things that drops off the ball. How do you maintain that, both from a mental standpoint and also physically, because you have to maintain a state of preparedness even if there's no deployments on the horizon, I suppose?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the physical side of things, that's just, you know, something that's been ingrained into me from an early age, and obviously through my military career, is maintaining my physical sort of output and maintaining fitness. So you are ready for sort of anything. So I've never really struggled with that side of things.
What's your go-to workouts? How often do you train?
I'll train most days, to be honest. Really started to get into boxing the last sort of couple of years. Just think it's great sport, great fitness. Really got into that.
Dude, boxing or grappling or anything, I've done a bit of grappling in the past. It's a whole nother level of fitness, because most types of fitness, you control most aspects of it. Do you know what I mean? If you're on a air bike or if you're in the gym, you control it. If you want to ramp it up or ramp it down, that's for you. But fight training, when you go in against an opponent, an assailant that's coming at you, especially with grappling, when they're on top of you and they're pressing down on your face and you can't breathe, that's a whole nother level of cardio. I look at MMA fighters now, not only the blows they take, but just the work rate that they can sustain. It's just unreal. The same with boxers and everything like that.
Definitely, man.
Yeah. How old are you boys?
They are 4 in June.
4 in June. Having been in the military now for 10 plus years, or whatever it is, 10 years?
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be 10 years. Would you want them to go on and do it? Is it something you would, not that you want them, but if they decided to do it, would you rejoin now? Would you want them to?
I mean, of course, if they wanted to, I'd support them with that choice, obviously. And not just the Marines, obviously, but any forces. Obviously, I'd like them to, but I would. I wouldn't be forceful in any way. Just like I wasn't as growing up and deciding what I wanted to do after school. If they wanted to go to uni or whatever, obviously I'm going to be supportive, and so is my wife. Yeah,
but ultimately you don't discourage them from it, because some people look back on the forces, and I see some people look back on the fire service and they're like, I wouldn't join it today. I wouldn't want my kids going into the fire service. It's this, it's that. I'm like, dude, whoa. Do you know what I mean? It's still a great job. And I often find, and the reason I wanted to ask you is because you hear that sometimes from people that have never been in a different job. They've gone into something from a very young age, and they've never experienced working in a factory on night shifts.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Shifting sacks of frozen meat. That stuff sucks. That is hard.
Yeah. I mean, you've just got to remember, like, the good times, basically. That's all that I would say. Like, be so fortunate to, travel around the world, see all these amazing places whilst getting paid. You know what I mean? You don't get any other job.
What have been some of the proudest moments in the military for you?
I'd say the biggest one is probably going to be receiving my Green Beret in front of my family, because I had that extra struggle of having to do all the commando tests again. Yeah, I was in a shit state, obviously, doing that. So it meant a lot more, doing it twice and then receiving my Green Beret finally at the end. So can't see anything beating that, to be honest.
I've got quite a limited, as I'm sure has been evident, quite a limited interpretation of how expansive the military really is, because I looked at Royal Marine Commandos as the top of the top, and I know you've gone on to various things that we perhaps can't discuss today, but what other options are there once people pass through the Marines? I thought that was like it. There's still levels far beyond that, I suppose.
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's obviously numerous branches in the Marines that you can go on and specialise in, or like, for instance, I know a few of my friends have transferred over to the Navy and the RAF. They're doing a few years in the Marines just to specialise in something else, really, and just give someone else a go. I mean, once you're in it, it's quite common for people to swap over, and even abroad to Australia or America, there's these like lateral transfers you can do. Yeah, there's shitloads you can do. Is
it quite easy for people to do that sort of thing? Because I think people worry that if they go into something, they have this forever mindset where they're like, well, if I join, I'm going to be stuck, in the UK for the next 20 years. I might never get to go abroad. Is it easy for people? I always say to people, it's not your resources, it's your resourcefulness. If you really want to move around, even like the fire service, there's places you can go all over the world. Firefighters, military exist all over. Is it easy to do that?
Yeah, I mean, like you were saying, you've got to put yourself out there if you want to do something new. There's drafts all over the place. where you can, move on, go somewhere for a couple of years and then come back, even move your family with you, you know what I mean? Yeah, you just got to have the willingness to do it, really, not just sit on your ass and then complain about it all.
What have been some of the hardest stuff that you've done? And I suppose more specifically, have you ever been afraid in the job? Because you've done deployments and stuff all over the world, some of which we probably couldn't discuss, but have you ever been afraid in the job, or is that sort of like a fallacy? Do you just stop being scared because you're there to do a job?
No. And whoever says that they've not been afraid is lying. I'd say for me, doing nighttime parachute jumping is a game changer.
Jesus. You're free falling through the pitch black. Do you still get the same perception of the earth hurtling towards you when it's in the pitch black, or is it like, how does it work? Is it all off where the sort of height that you're at, and is that how you trigger it?
Yeah, so you have like, a GPS and altimeter, and obviously at night time you have night vision on, but yeah, you lose that perception straight away being at night time. Yeah, and obviously it's definitely a scary moment, especially the first couple that you do.
How big are the teams that you tend to jump with when you're on deployments?
It can vary really, depending on sort of task, etc. When it's just in like a training role, you can get like a whole company out, so like 30 blokes.
Is there anything that the civilians really have a misunderstanding? Because the branches of the military have had a bad rap at some points in the past, because when you go away and do the necessary, we will sometimes only get a very small clip. We will only get I suppose almost a propaganda aspect of what people want to see, or what people want, that fits the narrative that people are trying to agree with at the time. Is there any big misperceptions you think people have about people in the military? Because some people think we don't need them. Some people think it's vile. Some people think it's necessary. Is there any, when you speak to friends or the first time you tell somebody what you do for a living, is there any big misperceptions?
For me, like, I'll be careful what I say, obviously, but my friends and family, like, mega supportive, and I've never really had that conflict in conversation with someone I've met, and there's been that issue that I am in the military or whatever. I'd say just that having that moment to, as in for civilians to have that moment and just realise like the person they're speaking to, if they are in the military, might have something wrong with them, or being exposed to something that they're affecting them, and then that could trigger something. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'd say that's the biggest wary point, because obviously it affects people differently, and then if they're coming into some sort of altercation with a civvy that's being an idiot, then it normally ends one way.
Yeah, and that's it. And I suppose there is a small element of pride that comes with when you say that, but also that's not a threat. Just remember what you're doing. This person's been trained to exist in a very different environment. The extremes that you deal with in the military are usually at the precipice of it's either 0 or it's 100. Do you know what I mean? You're not dealing with the greatest respect, you're not dealing with a police officer who's used to taking that level of abuse. Yeah. That must require, we spoke about swallowing earlier, that must require a lot.
Yeah.
Do you still go out and I know during the pandemic, obviously you've not been able to, but are you still able to just engage with people on a day-to-day basis, or is it just too frustrating with some of the things that people think they're dealing with versus the potentially life and death scenarios that you are confronted with on operations?
I mean, especially in my younger years, sort of in the Marines, when I first passed out, I was a freaking nightmare. Like, I was in the shit loads.
Really?
All the time for fighting and, just all that usual stuff. But I've definitely moved on from that, especially having kids and getting married. It's it has mega calmed me down, which is obviously a good thing.
Why do you think it's calmed you down? What sort of habit or thing do you think you developed since having kids? What's changed about you as you've got a bit older?
I think just having the responsibility, to be honest. I think just having that moment thinking, is this actually worth it? What am I going to gain from doing this? And then the effect it's going to have on the rest of my family. If that happens, if I get arrested for doing this and lose my job, this is going to be the fallout from it.
Yeah.
So I think in my early years I just didn't have that thinking process at all, and it was just like, this guy's an idiot, I'm going to freaking bang him out, basically.
Because you can, and you know what to do, and you know how to do it. Having been in for so long now, how long do you see the average career of somebody in your sort of role now? Do you see yourself doing it for 20, 30 years? Or
I think the average time now has massively come down since, for example, when my dad was in, when it was very the norm was to stay in for the 22 years. I think lads now, you know, are doing like anywhere between 4 and 8 years, really. Especially the lads I passed out with and training. Majority of them have gone now and doing, you know, their own thing in Civvy Street, or they've cross-stepped into an emergency services and just, you know, started a new career basically.
Why do you think they do that?
I just think there's a lot more opportunity now, and people are open to, you know, a new experience. Especially people that have already joined the military. They've already taken that, you know, step into doing something that they, you know, didn't know anything about. So them moving on to something else isn't really a new thing for them. It's just they just want a different experience.
So how do you keep the motivation, both with the company but also with your operational role? You've been going for 10 years now, no longer than other people. What keeps you romantic about it? What keeps you want to keep doing it? What keeps you passionate about it?
I think the thing I would miss the most if I left would just be, you know, having that good time with, like, you know, your team, just like all the humour, all like the Fridays that you get off that you would get in Civvy Street. Yeah. That's a big one. Yeah, just like all the trips, really. Like you quickly take that for granted when you'd left, like all the good times that you had with like your mates. Yeah. You know, and you're doing a job that, you know, you've wanted to do.
So for anyone that's listened to this and thinks, you know what, shit, I'm going to go for it. Ben's obviously done it. He's still been in there 10 years. He still loves it. What advice would you give either to somebody that wants to join the Marines, or even what advice would you give to Ben, you know, the 17 or 16-year-old Ben? What advice would you give to someone?
I'd just say you've got to want it. And if you don't, it'll become quickly apparent, you know, when you do start basic training. So just have a big hard think about it. Do your research. There's so much stuff now on, you know, the internet, videos that you can actually, you know, watch crew training, and they've done a few documentaries on it now, not just for the Royal Marines, but other services as well. Yeah. And just strap yourself in and enjoy it, really.
So having done it now, what are you most looking forward to? What are your sort of big goals, both with the company itself and also for you professionally, if you can discuss it? What are things that you still want to go on and do?
So we'll start with the company. Would obviously love to continue to grow the, our following on social media. Love to, you know, get into a few collaborations with other military emergency services companies out there. We're looking at sponsoring some charity events from veteran sort of organisations at the end of the year. That'll be something really good, and we're looking forward to, especially with, you know, all the COVID restrictions starting to lift now, which is good for everyone. Military wise, just continue to enjoy the job, really, and as soon as that, you know, stops, I'll be looking to move on to, you know, a new chapter, a new career, new experiences, and just seeing where it takes me, really.
I suppose, with all due respect, that kind of question is one of those that when you get to a point, I would imagine, past the Marines, unless you're in the military, it really does become that. It always sounds like a bit of an arsehole answer, but it's a bit like, can't really talk about it. Because you'd love to say to somebody, what's the goal? And you can't say, I'm going to go and do this company. I've just been chosen for that selection. I've got this course coming up. I'm going on that deployment, because the nature of it is, I suppose, for anybody that's not in it, I mean, it sounds great in the Marine world and stuff like that. But when you get beyond that, you almost can't sell it. You can't get people interested about it, because unless they're in it, you can't talk about it.
I know, yeah.
That must be one of those.
You got the vibe.
Until you're retired, you kind of just become that grey man, I suppose. People are like, so what have you been up to? Yeah. I've been on deployment. And that's it. Oh, okay, Ben, that sounds great. Okay, yeah, I've been cutting the grass and taking the kids to school. Yeah, awesome, brother. Thank you for coming on today, mate. I'm always really interested in, because we call it the voice of the emergency services, but the elusive side of what so many of our personnel do when they're overseas. Do you know what I mean? We barely ever get a chance to learn about it and see it, and I really appreciate you coming on and sort of opening my eyes, and certainly to the 60 plus countries or whatever it is now. I think it's great. You know, it's something I want to get a lot more of from all aspects of the military and frontline, because what you do is great. Really appreciate it. And I know everybody will agree with me.
Yeah, no, it's been a great privilege to come on, and thanks again. Hopefully get to do it again in the future.
Yeah, brother. So for anybody that wants to learn a bit more about Clack Off Clothing, where's the best place to find the company? Where's the best place to connect with you or the team or to get their hands on some stuff?
So best thing to do is to get on the socials, so Facebook and Instagram, Clack Off Clothing, and then there's the link on both of those for the website. Just, check it out. Drop us a message if you've got any questions about anything, and hopefully chat to you soon.
Love it. Everything will be in the notes for the podcast below so people can jump straight through, and I really appreciate that, mate. Send love to the family, send love to the guys, and I'll speak to you soon.
Yeah, cheers, mate. Stay safe.
Well, there you have it, folks. That was my conversation with Ben. Really interesting, but as I'm sure you can appreciate, fairly elusive guy at times. The nature of the role that Ben does means that ultimately we're never going to know the full ins and outs of what they do, but we understand and appreciate the outcome, and that outcome is what keeps us safe every day. Big thanks to Ben, all of our military, Navy and Air Force personnel out there keeping us safe, battling the monsters and the demons that come in human form so that we don't have to. A quick reminder before we go, our partner HAIX are relentless in how they show their support. One of you listeners, that's right, one of you maniacs is going to get a pair of HAIX Black Eagle footwear. HAIX are a partner of the podcast, and their unwavering, undeniable love for frontline workers is manifesting itself in this giveaway. We're going to be doing this every single month. But if you want to be in it to win it, you've got to be following the Instagram page, jump on the Facebook page, find the post. It's there. It's coming out every week. You've got to tag it, follow it, share it, and you will be in for the draw. This draw is happening at the end of the month. We'll be picking one of our listeners, one of our followers, sending them an absolutely free pair. No silly small print about paying the postage or anything like that. It's 100% free. June 30th, we'll be doing the draw. So get in there, get on the mailing list, get on the Instagram page, get on the Facebook page, have a look. Got to be in it to win it. And once again, thank you for listening. Get out there, kick some ass, take some names, and I will see you next time right here on the Firefighters Podcast.